I watched the champagne glass hit the marble floor before I heard it. 10 seconds earlier, my mother had told their biggest client that I was just a disappointment. She didn't know the jet behind her, the one the client was about to board, was mine. I stood at the edge of the terminallights.com and collected every word she said, carved deeper than she realized. Then the client turned, eyes narrowing as he looked at me. "Wait, this is your daughter's company?" he asked. In that moment, everything they'd built on lies finally began to crack. My name is Maya Collins. If you're wondering how a daughter ends up standing across from her parents at a private terminal, while they downgrade her life's work to a stranger, that road started long before the champagne shattered. I grew up in an immaculate house outside Boston. The carpets never wrinkled. Dinner conversations felt more like performance reviews. My parents, Edward and Vivian Collins, ran a consulting firm. They believed children were assets to be molded, not people to be known. Dad taught me profit margins before I could do long division. Mom taught me how to sit, speak, and smile so the right people would approve. No one taught me how to be myself. When I was 8, I watched a private jet slice into a blue winter sky. Something in my chest tightened, wonder, maybe freedom, and I whispered, "I want to fly one day." Dad didn't look up from his call. Mom said pilots were just drivers with better uniforms. Still, the spark stayed. I hid aviation magazines under my mattress. I checked out books on aircraft from the school library. I drew runway layouts on homework sheets. Meanwhile, my parents had already written my future. I would inherit their firm, marry someone from their circle, and maintain the Collins brand. If I brought home an A-, Dad booked a tutor before dinner. If I asked about soccer or art, Mom reminded me that successful families don't raise distracted children. Even my bedroom felt curated, framed certificates, leadership awards, shelves of business books chosen by them. Not me. The only person who ever saw the real me was Jenna Brooks. Her dad, Captain Reynolds, was a commercial pilot who told stories that lit something inside me. He once said, "Aviation makes room for people who chase the sky." I held that line like a secret promise. When I applied to aviation management programs behind my parents' backs, Dad found the letters and tore them in half. Mom compared me to an Ivy League golden child she'd met at a country club. That night, I realized love in my family came with conditions. I would never meet them. Still, I spent the next decade trying. College became my turning point. On paper, I majored in business because they insisted. My electives told a different story. Logistics, operations, transportation systems. Quiet rebellions disguised as compliance. Professor Henry Walsh noticed. After class, he said, "You think like someone who belongs in aviation. Why aren't you there?" I couldn't explain 22 years of pressure in a sentence. So I shrugged. He nodded like he understood, and that one conversation became a doorway. Internships, contacts, guidance. My secret life finally had air to breathe. Secrets don't stay hidden forever in a Collins household. Every break home turned into an interrogation. Mom asked about my GPA, loud enough for the neighbors. Dad asked which consulting clubs I joined. If I hesitated, he'd sigh as if I were throwing away the family legacy. They compared me to kids with the right internships, the right futures, the right checklists. Sometimes I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror and wondered if I still recognized myself. After graduation, they offered me a position at their firm, an extravagant salary, a clear promotion track, everything anyone should want. The same afternoon, I accepted a modest operations job at a regional airline. Low pay, long hours, night shifts. It felt like oxygen, so I took it. They reacted like I'd committed treason. Dad said I was throwing away generational progress. Mom said she couldn't believe her daughter wanted to work at an airport counter like a teenager. I moved out of their guest house and into a tiny apartment overlooking the runway. Dad didn't speak to me for months, but I stayed. I learned scheduling, dispatch, crew management, compliance. I memorized the sound of jet engines and the rhythm of a bustling terminal. For the first time, I loved waking up. Still, the undercurrent remained. At holidays, Mom told relatives I was still figuring things out. Dad talked about me like I wasn't in the room. Years later, everything finally snapped in a private terminal. I was reviewing a flight manifest when I heard my mother's clipped vowels behind me. "She's just a disappointment," she said to Leonard Hayes, an international CEO whose contract could transform any aviation company. "Our daughter works at the airport now. We try not to talk about it." My chest tightened. Not because I was shocked, I had heard versions of that line my whole life, but because she said it with such ease, like fact. Like my career had been reduced to a family embarrassment. Hayes glanced at the jet, warming on the tarmac. My mother stepped closer, smoothing her blazer sleeve like she was sweeping crumbs off an expensive table. Dad laughed quietly, the kind of laugh that pretends to be modest while bragging. She never quite fit our world, he said. Some people just don't have the discipline for real business. My company, my aircraft, my employees, erased in one sentence. For years, I'd tried to earn their respect. I'd sent them newsletters, invited them to milestones, given them small windows into my world. I had hoped, stupidly, that one day they'd see someone worth being proud of. And there they were, 15 feet from the jet I owned, preparing to board a flight I was personally overseeing, telling Hayes I was nothing. I stepped back and let the anger settle into something colder and clearer. Tessa, my operations director, noticed. You okay? She asked. No, I said calmly, but I will be. That afternoon I reviewed every detail of the flight myself. Linens, catering, prep crew notes. Every inch of that jet reflected the standard I had built from scratch. As I walked down the aisle, touching leather seats and polished trim, something hardened inside me. The next time my parents talked about me like I didn't matter, they would be doing it in the cabin of the company they pretended didn't exist. I didn't need revenge. The truth would handle that for me. Fate, as it happened, was only one flight away. I arrived at the terminal long before their car curved up the curb. If I was going to face them, it wouldn't be as their daughter, the one they sculpted and diminished. It would be as the woman I had built, piece by piece, late night by late night, mistake by mistake, victory by victory. My staff moved around me efficiently. The prep team whispered final confirmations. Catering loaded the last trays. Pilots reviewed checklists with calm familiarity. No one knew the personal storm heading their way. The black sedan pulled up. Even from behind the glass, I could see my mother's posture, poised, chin tilted just enough to signal superiority. My father smoothed his suit like he was entering a boardroom. Vivian clicked in her heels. Leonard Hayes rolled an overnight bag. Already talking about the agenda for Zurich, Hayes asked, "Will your daughter be joining us today?" My mother sighed that patient, superior sigh. No, she works at the airport, not in aviation, she said with a soft shrug. We try not to mention it. Dad nodded that subtle shake of his head that meant, what can you do with children like that? When the sliding doors opened and cold morning air swept around them, Hayes looked up and saw me standing there. He stepped forward. You must be Maya, he said, extending his hand. The CEO. My mother froze. My father blinked, as if the language had been switched mid-sentence. I smiled politely. Good morning, Mr. Hayes. Welcome to our terminal. We're honored to handle your trip today. Hayes looked between them, then at me. Your parents told me you worked at the airport. I didn't realize you owned the aviation company. My mother's grip on the champagne flute loosened. The glass slipped, slow motion, before it shattered against the marble. The sharp crack echoed through the terminal. Every head turned. She didn't bend to pick it up. She stared at me like she'd seen a ghost. My father recovered faster, but his voice wavered. Maya has been involved in aviation for some time, he said, choosing words carefully. We're very proud. The lie was so easy it almost impressed me. Hayes read everything. The panic, the scramble, the unraveling of a narrative they'd protected for years. Well, he said, she runs an exceptional operation. I motioned toward the tarmac. Shall we board? The crew is ready. We walked toward the jet. My parents drifted behind, whispering rapid, clipped panic. This is your newest? Hayes asked as we approached the gleaming fuselage. It is, I said. Long range, quiet cabin, customized interior. The membership clients love it. He murmured, impressive. Very. Inside, he moved through the cabin with genuine interest, touching leather and inspecting the conference space. My parents looked around as if the walls might accuse them. During the pre-flight briefing they sat across from Hayes and me. The arrangement felt poetic. Years of emotional distance turned into physical placement. Hayes leaned forward. Tell me, Maya, what inspired you to start a private aviation company? I didn't sugarcoat it. I worked in operations for years. I saw gaps. Pricing that made no sense, inconsistent service, communication failures. I wanted better, more transparent, more human. He nodded. Exactly what drew me to your proposal. My mother cleared her throat. We always knew Maya had potential, she said, voice tight. We encouraged her. I looked at her. Really? Encouraged? I asked gently. Her mouth opened, then shut. Hayes stepped in. Encouragement is important, he said, but vision that comes from within matters more. Hayes praised the financial model. That membership structure is brilliant, he said. He asked about expansion. We're preparing for international operations, I replied. This flight will give us crucial data for scaling. His enthusiasm grew with every detail I outlined. Routes, capacity, projected ROI. My parents listened in silence, cornered by a truth they could no longer reshape. Finally, Hayes sat back. I'd like to expand our partnership. All executive travel, not just this trip. My mother swallowed. My father blinked. I kept my voice steady. We'd be honored to handle it. He smiled. Your parents talked about you as if you were lost. I see someone who built her own sky. My mother's breath caught. My father looked away. The jet descended into Zurich through soft clouds. When the wheels touched down, the moment felt bigger than landing. It felt like years of silence meeting solid ground. After we disembarked, Hayes shook my hand. You've built something extraordinary, he said. Don't let anyone, family or not, tell you otherwise. My parents lingered on the quiet tarmac, unsure how to speak. Vivian approached first. Maya, why didn't you tell us? She asked. I said softly, you never listened. Edward's expression was unfamiliar. Less certainty, more reckoning. We misjudged things, he said, halting. We hear you, he added. I nodded slowly. Maybe, I said. But first, you'll need to understand something. I don't need your approval anymore. I won't accept your disrespect. They waited. I turned toward the terminal. Enjoy your trip. My team will take care of you. I didn't look back. For the first time, they had to follow my lead. In the weeks after that flight, everything moved fast. Contracts, meetings, expansion plans. Hayes finalized the partnership within days. New clients came almost immediately. Success has a way of speaking for itself. Back at headquarters, my team celebrated with quiet pride. The lobby overflowed with small paper airplanes. Each one had a note. Proud of you. We're with you. You did this. I kept one on my desk. My parents stayed silent for almost 2 weeks. Then, on a gray Thursday, I got an email from my father. We'd like to talk when you're ready. It wasn't a lecture. It wasn't an argument. It was an invitation. Healing isn't a straight line, so I agreed to meet them for coffee in the city. They came different, less polished, less certain. My mother didn't comment on my outfit. My father didn't ask about real jobs. They listened. Really listened. There were apologies, not perfect, not complete, but real enough to soften something inside me without erasing the past. We weren't fixed. We weren't suddenly close, but for the first time, the distance between us stopped being a wound. It became a boundary, one I finally knew how to hold. That night, back at the airport, I watched a jet lift into the sunset. I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not because they'd changed, but because I had. The sky finally felt like mine. People assume the moment of power was when the champagne shattered, or when Hayes asked if the company was mine. The real shift came later, quiet and steady. When I realized I no longer needed to fight for a place in a family that never made room for me. I built my own space. I built my own sky. I invited in only the people who valued it. If you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or talked about like you weren't in the room, remember, you're allowed to rise anyway. You're allowed to build something they can't ignore. If this story hit home, share your experience in the comments, and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next